So if you can, it's super helpful if you can turn on your video, if you can update your name to reflect your jurisdiction or your affiliation, just so we have a sense of who's in the room. Feel free to hide your self view if you're just really tired of looking at yourself in the camera all day. This is a little trick that can be helpful for Zoom fatigue. If you want to please use the chat for questions or comments related to the call. You can also message Brianne directly if you are having any tech issues during the conversation. And then, side note, if a colleague has invited you and you don't have a USDN login, you can email support at USDN in order to get that. So all that being said, I am now going to hand it over to my fantastic colleague, Francesco Maria Graziani, the Counselor EU delegation to the US, who has been a fantastic partner, along with many of the other amazing Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, who are also on this call and who have made this whole session possible. So with no further ado, Francesco, I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Julia. And I must say, it's becoming like a very nice tradition for me to be here on behalf of the European Union delegation here in Washington, D.C. And participate in the second. This is the second of the 3 webinars that we're supporting through USDN. So a big thank to you and your colleagues for all the work you put in this. As you know, we're extremely pleased to engage with you and also via the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, GCoM. So a big congratulations to the GCoM members is in order, I would say. We have a few on this call, and it's with pride that I say that US cities are leaders in the GCoM Alliance. So more than 400 cities received like GCoM badges in 2023, and this is actually the most of any country in this hemisphere and this part of the world. So congratulations to all of the GCoM members. Through GCoM, of course, like a very few words, the European Union works with municipalities across the EU and around the world, including both north of you in Canada, and we will also hear from a Canadian city shortly, and south of you in Latin America and the Caribbean. So, of course, on top of here in the US. As European Union, of course, we understand the importance of governments working across boundaries and levels of government to address global climate change challenges. The European Union fundamentally believes in doing this, in engaging with cities and towns in Europe, and their work with their residents at really like neighborhood level, as well as within their regions, counties, provinces, national governments, and all the subnational governments, and of course the EU level. Very few words like on today, since you already introduced us, and we have so much of a full agenda today. But we're very lucky because we're going to hear like about 2 great examples from the EU on how municipalities are doing this job. We have colleagues from Denmark that will talk to us about like an innovative national approach that is known as DK 2020. I see Nick there. We briefly spoke to him before, and let's say through DK 2020, every single municipality in Denmark, so we're talking about 98 of them, and now has a climate action plan. So extremely important. And then we will hear from Valencia, that is proudly the Europe's green capital in 2024, about their energy offices. You can a bit think about it as a library or a community center. And the main dish in that discussion is energy, really at your home level, household level, and the neighborhood around you. So Europe's Green Capital has been awarded annually since 2008 to a city with more than 100,000 residents, and that demonstrates a commitment to ongoing and ambitious goals for environmental improvement and sustainable development. So we hope that this can be, of course, a role model to inspire other cities. And when it's an important city as Valencia to win it, and we're talking about like the second city in Spain, and we are even more happy to have like this visible message out there. So I think I'll limit here, Julia, and I just wanted to thank you again for joining us. I look forward to today's presentations and an interesting debate, and I look forward also to the webinar that we have in 2 weeks on the 10th of October, and of course to the USDN annual conference in Minneapolis in October. So back to you, Julia, and thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So yes, we've got a great mix. We've got some folks from cities who are going to be sharing their engagement work. We've got some amazing community partners who will be sharing their engagement work. And these are going to be kind of short, like 10-minute presentations, kind of TED Talk style. You'll have a couple minutes to ask some questions. So please put those in the chat as you have them so we can group them and give them to speakers in the presentations. And then we'll move on to the next. So it's going to be sort of a lightning round, lots of different perspectives and stories. Hopefully you get some inspiration and ideas for your work going forward. I'm just going to introduce each speaker briefly as they come up and let them do most of the work in talking about what they're doing, because that'll be much more interesting to hear from them than from me. So with that, I would love to pass it over to our first speakers from Denmark. Nicholas and Julie, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Julia. I will just share my screen, and what we're going to do now is that I will tell you a few words about the model that Francesco just mentioned, which is called DK 2020, which is a multi-level governance model supporting local climate action in Denmark. And then Julie will tell us about the experience at the municipal level of engaging with this model and engaging with local citizens. So what exactly is this DK 2020 model, and why is it relevant? DK 2020 is a model that aims to help all Danish municipalities to develop and implement climate action plans which are aligned with the Paris Agreement and certified using the climate action planning framework from C40 cities. So it started in 2018 after Copenhagen, which is a city member of the C40 network, submitted their own climate action plan. And this is inspired Real Dania, which is a Danish philanthropic organization and the funder of C40, to try to scale up and replicate this model in all of Denmark. So this led to the launch of this DK 2020 program, in which the interest organization of local governments in Denmark was involved, as well as the Danish regions, C40, and Concito, which is my organization, which is a non-profit climate think tank. So what we ended up setting up was a multi-tiered structure supporting climate action, with C40 acting as like the link to this to the global sort of expertise level. We're using the same framework they are using in cities like Copenhagen, New York, and so on. At the national level, we at Concito, we've translated this framework to the Danish context. And then we have helped set up regional organizations in each of the 5 regions of Denmark to help local municipalities more directly in implementing the climate action planning framework. So as a result, almost all Danish municipalities currently have a certified climate action plan, and the last 2 are in the process of getting it validated. And it corresponds to a large reduction in emission if they are implemented. They also have a much better way to tackle adaptation than they previously did. And it led to a significant amount of capacity building. So there's a higher level of awareness, a higher level of skill, and more data available, more engagement from the bottom up as well. So we are now moving on to the actual implementation of the plans after they have been validated. And this is, of course, the critical part. They still have to implement all they have promised. But now it is the interest organization of local governments in Denmark, which is the lead on supporting the implementation. So what we've learned from this experience is that it's been very successful as a way of setting up a completely bottom-up support structure for local climate action. GCA 2020 has involved all the municipalities in Denmark with zero support from the national government. So in that sense, we've managed to set up something quite solid with no national funding, no official support from the government, which is rare. And it's been a strength and a weakness because we are now trying to fill that gap and get this national support. It has worked quite well because of this multi-tiered structure we had. But we have had challenges in perhaps setting up enough time to learn during the process. So if this were to be replicated, we would, for instance, advise having a more scattered implementation with several groups of municipalities doing it over time. We also want to remind everyone that the Danish municipalities have a quite strong mandate and a lot of available resources, so they were also set up quite well for this implementation. So in other national contexts, it might make sense to adapt these criteria. You can read more about this by following the link at the bottom, which you should get after the webinar. Now, without further ado, I will just leave the floor to Julie to tell us more about the implementation in Greve municipality.
I have a disabled share, host disable attendee screen sharing, Briannis or Julia. Is that something you can help me with?
Yep, you should be good now.
Thank you. I am. Perfect. So, you see my slides now? Everything's fine?
We don't see the presentation mode.
You do now?
We're still not seeing presentation mode, but the slide's large, so you can go ahead with this if you're comfortable.
Okay, so if I just try and change one now, you see the change?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Then I'll just I'll rearrange and do it by that way. Okay, first, thank you for inviting me and listening. And I know for sure that some of you might know a bit about what I'm going to tell you because some cities have tried this before in other contexts or maybe other forms, maybe not the GCoM 2020 project model, but some of the citizen engagement we've tried. I know Vancouver and Glasgow, other speakers today, which have interesting stories to tell, they've tried it, but those are not the stories they're going to tell tonight. So I'll invite you into the Greve municipality where we have had some exciting citizen engagement. So firstly, I'll tell you what kind of municipality Greve is and where we were when GCoM 2020 kind of disrupted the municipality. And then second, I'll go on explaining this first and very important step for us, going from nothingness to dialogue between politicians and inhabitants. And then thirdly, I'll just briefly show you a couple of supplementary slides without further introduction, but just you know that they'll be in the handouts and you'll be welcome to contact me with questions afterwards. So what is this municipality of Greve? It's just south of the Copenhagen, the capital of Denmark. And if you zoom in here, you'll see that there's farming and there's a highway dividing the farming, the open land with the building. The builded area, which you see in my background, has a sandy beach for 8 kilometers here. And the Greve municipality was actually more or less built in the 70s because people were moving out from Copenhagen, taking the train 20 minutes south, and just building with their own hands the houses. And as it is so close to Copenhagen, they're quite attractive nowadays. And as the city's citizens from then are in the 80s, right, because it's 50 years ago, the houses are now taken over by new buyers and generations. But the city council have stayed more or less the same, and it's been either conservative or liberal, both of which is right-winged in a Danish context for these 50 years, appealing to the middle class, do-it-yourself kind of types. And then 10 years ago, the city council shut down on working on CO2 reductions. So when the GK 2020 national project, not national stately, but national municipality-wise, came along, it kind of disrupted at Greve municipality, where the city council hadn't been thinking much about CO2 for a couple of years. So it affected the municipality quite a bit. Flooding and sea level rise had been on the agenda, but CO2 had not. So nobody knew what the citizens thought about it, what the administration. They didn't dare ask the politicians anything about CO2 or greenhouse gas emissions because they thought they'd just say no. So GK 2020 became kind of the peer pressure or social tipping point as more and more Danish municipalities joined in. So by 2020, the city council decided to join and open a position as climate officer, which is the job that I sought and gained. And when I started, the very first thing I noticed was that we really had to jumpstart some dialogue here. So luckily, the framework of C40, the CAP, specifically calls for dialogue with all key actors, usually meaning the energy distribution companies and big companies, maybe farmers, if land use is a major sector, because it's municipalities and not cities, you have the farmlands as well. But I decided we needed to jumpstart the dialogue beforehand with just the citizens to get everyone aboard and to stir things a bit up. And this is why I kind of call it going from nothingness to let the dialogue begin as the first step in Greve. It was the first municipal citizen assembly in Denmark on greenhouse gases. And there had been some in Glasgow, for instance, I think beforehand, and in Scotland. There's a lot of citizen assemblies, but at the time, there were only very scarce experiences in DK for this concept. I asked the politicians if they were in for a citizen assembly on climate change, specifically if they were wished to ask the citizens the question, we need your help to imagine what a climate negative future in our local community will be like. And they did. So a citizen assembly is bringing a representative group of citizens who are selected almost, I'll return to that, at random from the population to delve into a theme, to learn about it from experts, to deliberate upon it at great length, many hours, before they hand over their suggestions to the politicians. And this is just to give a few words on the citizen assembly. In Denmark, 80% of citizens communicate with the public sector by digital post. 80%. It's not ordinary email, of course, but a secure line, so to speak. So this was the channel we used to invite the citizens. We sent out an invitation to the 40,000 citizens. Basically at red, we, your city council, has decided to take action, but we have to find out what to do. Do you want to join in on giving us advice? And then furthermore, the politicians promised the populations to consider all the suggestions the members of the Citizen Assembly would come up with and give feedback after 3 months and again after 12 months on what was adopted and how or why not. So in Denmark, here in Greve, only about 2,000 people are digitally disabled. So we decided inviting the 40,000 by digital post was proficient. I had to go at greater lengths to get young people to sign up, though. Even though they have the digital post and they are not digitally disabled, the younger generations, it's just that they have the feeling of digital post being so much more for adults. So for 16-year-olds, they weren't easy to get. So I had to do something more for them to get them to sign up. But in the end, about 1% of the population signed up to being part of this lottery of seats. And they had to sign up to be able to gather for 2 full weekends and 4 evening meetings with no payment, just the food and opportunity. The lottery process is stratified random sampling, and that really has a great importance, because if it had just been a lottery, a random lottery, they would all have been possibly white males in their 50s with a university degree. Sorry to say, because that's the main part of the people signing up. They match those criteria. But there were enough among the signed up to match the criteria on gender and age and education and geography, so that the 36 chairs by the end was, as you see here on the photo, put in, given to people who had signed up and who matched the population, the percentage of women in the cities, in the municipality, the percentage of the age groups and educational levels and where they live in the municipality. So this was something I organized with the help of the Danish company We Do Democracy. And the process took me about a year alongside other climate tasks. But was it really worth it? Yes. The politicians, they were delighted of the courage and the sound work that they were handed by their citizens. So satisfied that they immediately asked the administration, after just immediately, like 1 week after, which is not much in a bureaucracy, to qualify and adopt the suggestions to CO2 reductions from the citizens. And they keep being satisfied and refer to it, and even prioritize implementing their suggestions now, just a week ago again, when money are scarce. And they have asked for another citizen assembly now. We are, for my last slides, and just this one to show you that all the initiatives here, which are in the squares, they are directly originating from the Citizen Assembly. And there are initiatives on the climate plan which are not in the squares, but that's because the climate plan is also on climate changes, mitigation, adapting, and the Citizen Assembly was only asked the question of how to reduce CO2. So, of course, the climate plan has more initiatives in it. And
Julie, I'm so sorry. This is amazing. I'm wondering, because I want to also make sure that we have enough time for other presenters. Can I ask you do you have this deck? Like, can we share it with folks so they can really dig into the details after the conversation? Would that be possible?
Absolutely. I was just about to say the same for the last slides. They were only meant for handouts. So they're just showing the process and how we are monitoring now, that how much has been implemented yet and what we expect for the next year. And it shows, has a link to our webpage where you have to use Google Translate, of course. And there's a little one on the organizational development. But those were the slides that I just wanted to let you know was in the handouts. And you have my email, so you are free to contact me with questions.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And Ebony, I know you'd asked about how you got youth to sign up. Perhaps that's something, Julie, that you'd be able to briefly respond to in the chat. But if you wanted to connect offline to dig into the details, that could be a great additional conversation. I want to hand it over now to Glasgow, where the city collaborated with the Village Storytelling Center on engaging the community on vision for a just transition. So with that, I'll hand it over to y'all.
Thank you very much, Julia. It's lovely to be here. My name is Helen Mill. I am the Executive Director of the Village Storytelling Centre. In Scotland, we have an old proverb which says that storytelling is something that should be done eye to eye, mind to mind and heart to heart. So with that in mind, I am not going to use any visual presentation today, and I'm also going to tell you a story. Now, I will read this story because it is from one of our community members. So I will read it so not to lose what the essence is of that story. You can bank on that. How can I help? A sentence I would use countless times throughout the day, greeting customers as they approached the counter. I liked helping people and feeling that I'd done a good job. From 1988 to 1996, I worked in the Bank of Scotland in Cowglen, within the National Savings Bank building. Back when people carried and spent cash and would usually only use their card to get money out of the auto teller. A wee bit different from how things are now that cards are king and contactless will likely put an end to that. How can I help? I would say as environmentalists approached the counter, smelling like fire and with fire in their hearts. They would come in to exchange small coins for something more usable, and we'd hear that across the road something was happening in the woods, something impactful. An eco-camp had formed to protest against the construction of the motorway. I was all for them. Unfortunately, some were less welcoming, coining them as hippies holding back progress. In my mind, the activists were just trying to save a green space to benefit the local community. My children at that point were 3 and 7, so I could empathise. Who wouldn't want cleaner air and less pollution? Who wouldn't want to avoid damaging woodland and impacting on wildlife? It's no wonder they were advocating for an alternative approach and different ways of living. After all, mortgage rates were through the roof. One of the main reasons I had to return to work so quickly after having my kids. The activists became part of the landscape, and I got used to them being there. One day, I was travelling to work, but something had changed. The road leading to the bank was closed, the full road from the Pollock roundabout all the way to the Round Toll roundabout. I knew the activists had been evicted. But this time I couldn't help it. It made me feel really sad. Looking back, I admire their resilience and humanity. I think of them and I thank them, even now, as we watch news stories about the changing climate and the cost of living crisis. But I think it's true to say that community spirit and people coming together always wins. You can bank on that. So, the Village Storytelling Centre are based in Glasgow in an area called Pollock, an area that you heard about in that story. We were set up 25 years ago by local people in response to a whole host of community challenges, barriers for people to access what they needed within the community, and there being a distinct lack of voice for people living in that community and the issues that affect them on a day-to-day basis. The work that we do expands well beyond our community. We deliver collaborative projects across the city and nationally. We deliver a performance programme, including a biennial festival of contemporary oral storytelling performance. And we also work in education. We deliver projects in schools. But 70% of our work still continues to be in our local community where we are embedded. We provide a range of storytelling activities for people of all ages, from babies all the way up to the oldest citizens. And part of our work is about ensuring that they have their voices heard. We ensure that they have the ability to articulate what they care about, to articulate their thoughts, their ideas, their opinions, and that is translated to the decision makers as well. We use a tool called applied storytelling. This is the purposeful use of story as a tool for education, for personal development, for community development, and increasingly for strategic policy and organisational change. Within applied storytelling, the role of the storyteller is fluid. So right now, I am the storyteller, but if we were to open up to a group setting, any one of you could take on the role of storyteller as you speak. It's person-centred and it's strengths-based. We always ensure that the people in the room know that they already have the power innate within them and the understanding that goes towards problem solving and making their lives better and their communities better. Anyone can use the techniques that we employ, but we also use, all our storytellers have performance experience, so it enhances the work that we do. Earlier this year, we were invited to work with Glasgow City Council to support them in their long-term just transition to net zero. Our role was to gather stories from local people to create a baseline of understanding of where local people were at when it came to climate change, activism, and their understanding of the phrase net zero. What was it? Through a variety of different techniques, I'll tell you a little bit more about in a second, we explored several themes. First of all, the impact of the unjust transition of historic deindustrialisation resulting in mass unemployment, economic decline, and a general sense of apathy and being unheard, and how that impact is still being felt today. The effect of the climate emergency and the impact on well-being, the inequalities surrounding that, and the people of Pollock, our community, and the city's wider role in activism and championing equality, diversity and justice, as well as green spaces, well-being, nature and biodiversity already in place or hoped for within our city. We explored those themes using the following approaches. Some of it was using traditional story to inspire conversation, including a script about that particular piece of activism that you heard of in that story. We worked with some young people to create a script, which we then used with other groups as a stimulus to continue that conversation. We also used an approach we call one step removed, in which we create a character, and the character can go on a journey, because that, giving that distance for people, it enables them to consider problems and the solving of those problems in a way that they can often not do for themselves, because they're bound by the impossibilities rather than the possibilities. And finally, we use an approach of gathering personal stories. And in this particular case, we piloted a new way of doing that by training local people as citizen storytellers, who would go out and gather these direct stories from their friends, their neighbours, their family members, and the people that they engaged with who may not engage in the projects that we deliver or other activities related to this type of project. This ensured us to be able to gather a lot of very rich material, and we learned a lot about the citizen storyteller model. However, of course, there were limitations. The stories gathered are the stories gathered, and so sometimes you don't get exactly what you're looking for, and you have to sometimes extract the meaning in those stories. So for example, you can take a lot of meaning if you dig a bit deeper below the surface of the words in that story. And time was limited. We could have benefited from potentially a greater period of time to go back, reflect on the gaps, to go back to groups and work with them for longer, to explore things in more detail. And we only had one part of the project. So there and other departments within the council take what we have created and use that as further stimulus to be to co-design That was our project. And I just want to finish by saying that Glasgow City Council are very brave in utilising these different approaches, and it's a joy to work alongside them.
Thank you so much, Helen. That is so fascinating. And if you have any like takeaways or other materials or anything for folks to take a look at from this, feel free to send it to me so I can send it to folks to look at afterwards. I think that would be of a lot of interest to really help people get even more of a grasp of it.
Great.
Um,
There is a website, sorry, but it's still having some tweaks to it, so I can
okay.
forward it on when it's no longer needing tweaked.
Brilliant. That would be great. Thank you. I'll stay tuned for that. Next, I want to hand it over to our wonderful colleagues just north of me in Seattle, to Vancouver to hear about the Climate Justice Field School. Lily and Sky, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm just going to share my screen. And let's see. Everyone see this?
Yep, looks good.
Awesome. Okay. Sky, you want to take it away?
Hey, hi, everybody. I am Skylar Sage. I'm from the Secwepemc Nation, which is the interior of BC. And I'm just going to put my webpage into the chat box there. But I'm a consultant and counselor, and I do all kinds of community work, as you can see on my webpage. And I was really excited to do this project with Lily and the rest of the gang. Yeah, bye, everyone.
And I'm Lily Raphael. I'm a project practitioner in sustainability work, artist, researcher, and educator tending to systems transformation. I work within the Solutions Lab, which is a social innovation unit nested in the City of Vancouver's Sustainability Department. And we bring city staff and community collaborators together in creative and learning-oriented processes to seek transformative solutions to some of the most complex challenges facing Vancouver. And we're going to talk to you today, Sky and I, about our project Sharing Power, learning from Vancouver's Climate Justice Field School.
But first, we just wanted to note that Lily and I are both very grateful to be living on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nation. We're immensely grateful to be on this land.
Mm-hmm. So I'll share a bit more about the project's origins in a moment, but wanted to highlight that this is really a project about relationships and emphasize the unique collaboration and conditions that made this work possible. So we've shaped this project through principles of shared ownership and contributions, and have spent a lot of time cultivating relationships to make this work happen. As we hear widely, addressing the climate crisis is going to take all of us. So part of this work was recognizing the need to decenter institutional power and decisions in order to shine light and give space on amazing work that's already being done for and by community and other initiatives in Vancouver. We've been really lucky and grateful to work with people like Sky and other researchers and community collaborators, artists, practitioners, who put in a lot of energy and labor to make this work happen, which is critical given limited capacity within the city. So just a bit more about this project. It was a unique collaboration between Solutions Lab and Emily Carr, University of Art and Design, and members of the field school, who I'll describe more about who they all were before in a little bit. And we received external and shared funding from the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance, Game Changer Fund, and MyTax, which funds university and public and private partnerships. And so that was how we connected with Emily Carr University. And these two funding streams enabled us to add big-hearted and minded folks to our hosting team and pay community collaborators for their participation in this project. So a bit of just our kind of the origins. In 2022, as part of the City of Vancouver's Climate Emergency Action Planning process, a group of community practitioners and activists came together to write a climate justice charter for Vancouver, which addresses climate change, equity, and reconciliation as entangled and intersectional issues. This is a picture of the climate equity working group, kind of at the tail end of that process of writing the charter, honoring the work. And I'll share links to the charter and other documents that we have, but just wanted to name a few of the goals here. So the charter outlines the vision, guidance, and accountability for a just climate future centered on the perspectives of those disproportionately impacted by climate change, including people who are disabled, racialized, Black, Indigenous, living below poverty line, young, old, unhoused, and so forth. There's a lot of goals here. I can read a few of them just to name a few. So supporting the equitable redistribution of burdens and benefits of climate response is a key goal of climate justice, as well as ensuring that work is guided by those who are most impacted by systemic oppression and climate change. There's lots of really rich things in this document, so I'll definitely share the link later. I just wanted to also name that without climate justice, tackling the climate crisis can only address symptoms and not root causes of colonialism, white supremacy, and capitalism. And this visual, which is part of the charter document, shows how climate justice intersects with all of these other different justices, and cities have a role to work at these problematic roots in an intersectional way. And that's something that we try to do within the field school. So following the publication of the charter, we had to, as city staff, needed to figure out what it means to actually implement climate justice and steward the work laid out by community. And it became clear that if we wanted to continue to center the well-being and wisdom of those most impacted by climate change, we needed to learn more about how to shift, share, and relinquish power, practice different forms of accountability, and actually take time to cultivate relationships instead of carrying on with work as usual. So the idea for a field school came about and brought together city staff working in climate planning and other climate practitioners from other institutions, artists, community organizers, researchers, people working in nonprofits, designers, students, and many members of the Climate Equity Working Group who authored the charter.
And throughout, we kept revisiting questions like, how do we work in a way that's actually co-created, and what does that feel like? We had a whole bunch of questions that we kept revisiting and exploring and coming up with new questions as we went along.
So here are some of the patterns that we've named and noticed over the years and that we're working to shift. So the ones on the left are patterns that we notice show up a lot in our day-to-day work in both our work culture and approaches to climate action at the local level. And on the right is what we're deliberately trying to move toward. So for example, one thing that we felt important to name is that when it comes to engagement work, we're moving away from seeing engagement as a means to serve or validate public sector work, but rather using engagement as a way to show up to understand and meet community needs. So it involves a kind of a different form of listening and participation for people coming from the city into this work. And yeah, just wanted to invite, as you read through this list, kind of which of these patterns do you maybe notice in your showing up in your own workplace or in your own climate work that you might be doing, and which patterns might you be wanting to move towards.
And we were also keeping in mind just where we are collectively, that we had just come together after COVID, and that noticing that people are having a harder time pretending like it was okay to just keep limping along or heading towards burnout. Like, these are some of the conversations we had with people. And what do we do? How do we, that we don't have to figure out everything by ourselves, and that we can come together and share some of our concerns, fears, but also values, wisdom, creativity. In the next slides, we'll show you some examples that seem a little bit obvious, but we were doing things with a lot of intention and reassessing like this along the way.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that we thought was important, for example, is to really name how we begin. So beginning is an opportunity to really signal that there's a different process taking place. So within the field school, we experimented with introductions, and we set aside kind of leading with job titles and professional credentials in favor of more flexible introductions that could acknowledge our ancestors, questions that we hold, stories that we hold, passions or experiences. We began kind of in this community garden space rather than in a typical kind of like boardroom setting that we might all often be used to, and our beginning of this journey together was marked by ceremony that Sky led, and also a song that I sang. And that formed kind of the opening and closing of this gathering, which invited cultural exchange as an important practice within climate justice work.
Sharing food is healing on so many levels. We need to practice staying open and flexible to what our community needs. We had noticed over the years that sharing food had, of course, disappeared, and especially during COVID, it was non-existent. But so bringing that back to what we were doing was important to us.
Yeah, and within this, making sure that everyone is fed means that no one is quietly fighting pangs of hunger while we're trying to focus on kind of different tasks of learning and being in dialogue together around pretty complex, difficult issues such as climate justice. And we found that having food kind of at our gatherings really helped to rearrange people and give us something in common to experience and nourish our minds and bodies. Go for it, Sky, if you want to talk about working outdoors.
I think we need to wrap it up.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't see. There's lots in here anyway, but we just kind of wanted to share like a few of our different practices that we had, and I'll share some of the invitations to our links, so to some of our documents. But yeah, thanks for your time, and yeah, I think that's it.
This is so cool. Thank you so much, Lily and Sky. And thank you for putting these links in here. I just want to really urge folks to open these up. Like the first one I had read through, and there's a ton in there. It's really excellent. And so definitely take a look. And I'm sure if you have specific follow-up questions, they would be willing to, share a little bit more information. And if you really want to dig in to hear more, let us know so that we can maybe try to invite them back after this taster of their work. And with that, I want to hand it over to our final speaker from Valencia. Alejandro, there you are. Welcome. I hand the mic to you to take us home.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you very much for inviting us, of course, and to be able to participate here. So I'm going to share the screen because also we are a bit late. So just a bit of context. I come from Valencia, which is a city in the east of Spain. Here, where I put the star here in the map of Europe. And we are, as it was introduced before, we are celebrating this year the European Green Capital, which is an award that is given to one city every year as a recognition of the policies and the projects that we implement in terms of climate change, energy, quality of air, and many other aspects. And this year, 2024, we are in Valencia celebrating this. So it's also a nice way to show all the things that we are doing in the city. So Valencia, it's a city of 800,000 inhabitants. And what I wanted to bring here today is a very practical experience, also a quite basic concept, but very powerful and very useful also that we have in Valencia, which is the energy offices. This Oficina de la Energía that you see here is the energy offices of Valencia. It's the project that we started back in 2019, so 5 years ago. And well, we have been scaling up this project. We have now 4 offices in the city in different neighborhoods, and I will explain now what it is. The whole idea comes from the concept of trying to engage citizens in the energy transition of the city. So we knew that we need to change the model, the energy model of our cities and our countries, but it's not just about technology. It's not just about changing fossil fuels for renewables, but it's about changing the whole concept of how we consume and produce energy. And we know that for this new model to be renewable, sustainable, but also fair and just, we needed to put citizens in the center of the whole thing. And this idea came of just having offices, municipal offices, to be close to citizens, to really give them the power and the information to be leading this energy transition and to be part of it. So these energy offices, basically, as I was saying, we have 3 of them in different neighborhoods, and another one that goes in an electric van around other neighborhoods of the city. And it's the thing that we are seeing here in these pictures. It's basically, as I was saying, a place where any citizen can go and ask any question that they may have related to energy, and they will get support and advice from professionals, and of course for free, because it's a public service. So basically, in the inside, they look like this. So we have citizens coming every day to the offices for workshops, for activities, for individual appointments, whatever, to solve their doubts and get, as I was saying, advice and support with anything that may that they may need. Basically, we cover the whole energy transition field in a very holistic way. So this is what we call the energy journey, that we start with just the basic stuff, the things that people really understand, because they are paying their bills every month. So we help them improving and understanding their energy bills, because at least in Spain, it's very confusing. It's not very transparent. No one understands what they're paying. Like the whole energy and electricity world is it's quite of confusing. So we start with the bills, then we also talk about habits, energy culture of how to consume less and live better, how to renovate your house. So already talking about windows, facades, aerothermal energy and things like that. Then we also talk about renewables, how you can connect to renewables and start consuming and producing your own solar energy, for instance, which is what we have in Valencia the most. Then we discuss also about improving your energy efficiency, of course, of your devices in your house. And then we discuss the right to energy. So in the offices, it's a very powerful place and tool to fight energy poverty. And in this sense, we collaborate with the social services of the municipality and also quite a few NGOs from the city to really tackle this issue and defend the right of everyone to have enough energy to live a nice life. So we work with the vulnerable people and vulnerable consumers in a, let's say, long-term perspective to allow them to improve their situation and be able to pay their bills and use energy efficiently and live with comfort in their houses. And this is also this whole journey, energy journey. It's something that it's very interesting because when we opened the offices, we realized that not everyone knew what we were offering, of course, because it's a new service. But it's very useful to start with something tangible as the energy bills, because then they come for the bills, but then you can, once they trust you, you can start discussing about other topics, as I was saying, renewables, energy efficiency, how to renovate your home, your house, and so on. And here are just some pictures of some of activities that we do. So we also we try not to be only in our offices, but we go outside of the offices, and we do a lot of activities at the neighborhood level with schools, with high schools, with neighbors associations, and many other things. We also organize some guided visits to buildings or houses that, for instance, this one is a big building in the city that was being renovated. in terms of energy efficiency. So we organized a guided visit with the architect to explain the project to some citizens that wanted to see it. We also organize almost every month guided tours around a couple of neighborhoods, so people can understand well, the differences in renovated or not renovated houses and what are the benefits of doing that. And these are just some more visits to houses. So we try to inspire people to really care about the topic of energy and energy efficiency. These are some of the numbers that we have had in the last years of people, now thousands of people that have come to the office and that we have given support to. And then as the last thing, I have summarized here 4 main challenges that we have had in these 5 years of offices that basically are the funding, of course. So basically these offices, in our case, are paid mostly by the municipality budget. So of course, the problem here is that you are relying on public funding and basically politicians that may support or not support the project. And we have been lucky that even with political changes, we have kept the political support and the budget from the municipality, but it's how it goes. We also get some funding from national and European projects, but it's not the majority of it. Then the team that works in the offices, it's also very challenging because you need complex, let's say, mixed profiles in the offices, because it's not only architects or engineers that need to be there, but you also need people that really know how to explain things to young people, old people, and so on. We also work with a lot of social employees. Then there's the challenge of trust, building trust in citizens, because in the beginning it's a new service, no one knows it, and people don't trust you. They think that you want to sell something, and so on. So that's why we start with the short-term results, as I was explaining with the energy bills example. And then there's the thing of the demand. So basically, how to communicate and how to start building this new energy culture and interest around the energy topic. And that's why I was also talking about this neighborhood project that we try to collaborate a lot with all the social and neighborhood level entities so people know us and trust us and come to the offices so we can work with them. And yeah, this is everything. So I will of course share the presentation too, and the first slide is also my email, and I'm available for any doubt that may come afterwards. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alejandro, and thank you so much to all of our amazing presenters. I know, again, it was a whirlwind tour, just like we said it would be. There was a lot in here. And just please feel free again. We'll follow up with folks. We're going to send all of these presentations so you can dig in deeper. Feel free to follow up with Brianna or I if you have additional questions or want to get connected for more. And I would just share a quick note that we are going to host the 3rd call of this series in October. It's going to be about paying for your climate plan with climate-friendly budgets and federal funding. We're going to hear from a few different folks about that. Please feel free to register here. And yes, follow up with our amazing folks, Rodrigo at GCoM, to learn more there. And with that, I'm going to let you go because I know everyone's got to go to the next thing. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your evening. Again, thank you so much to the amazing presenters. Take care all.
Thank you.